Hi there, it's Terry at Pampered Pug Crafts. Today I'm excited to show you how I make my wonky log cabin quilt blocks. These are fast and fun, and there's hardly any measuring at all. And best of all, the quilting is done as you sew the strips together. So stick around and I'll show you how. So I grabbed some fabrics out of my stash. These have really large patterns on them, but I thought it would work well once I cut them up into strips. You can also use scraps and just cut those up from your stash. It really doesn't matter. It's anything you want to do. I also put in some solids that I had from my stash as well, just to break up the busyness of so many prints. So when you cut your strips, try to aim for somewhere around 2 inches. You don't want to go less than 1 inch because once you put in the seam allowances, you're going to end up with really tiny pieces. You can do this for some of your scraps to use in between, but it's easier if you have a bigger piece to begin with. And the strips don't have to be straight. Actually, if you cut them a little bit crooked, that's even better because you're kind of going for that wonky, not perfect look. That's what gives it its appeal and its charm. So once your strips are all cut out, now you're ready for the next step. So we want to make our blocks 8 inches. So for the back, we want to have muslin, and then we're going to put batting, and then we're going to sew our strips onto the batting on the top. So the first thing we want to do is cut the muslin. This is really thin, and this is actually going to work better than just trying to quilt it on the batting itself. When you have batting and you're sewing with just that on your machine, you end up with a lot of that lint and you have to clean out your machine a lot more often. This is really thin. It's not going to add a lot of bulk, and it's not the backing that's going to show when the quilt is done. We're going to have a different fabric for the backing, and I'll show you how to do that. So we want our blocks to be 8 inches square. Now my ruler is 6.5 inches. So I'm going to use 2 rulers. This one's 2.5 inches. So together they make 9 inches. 6.5 and 2.5. So I'm going to line up the 1.5 inch mark at the edge of my fabric here because the total is 9 and we want 8. Scoot the other ruler right up next to it. So then when you make your cut, you've got perfect 8 inch piece. So from here, we can do the same thing. Put this edge at the 1.5 on this ruler. Scooch this one right over and trim it. That's how we're going to get our 8 inch muslin blocks for the back. Next we're going to do the batting. So this is a perfect kind of project to use up your smaller batting pieces, and so that we don't get a bunch of fuzzies stuck in our cutting mat, I'm going to take a piece of this advertising newspaper. This works really good to put underneath, and when you cut with this in between your batting and your cutting mat, you're not going to get all of those fuzzies stuck in there that are really hard to get out. So I'm going to use the same method I did with the muslin and line the rulers up so that I get 8 inches. Make sure they're straight. And make sure my paper's underneath. That would also be good, wouldn't it? Okay, now we're cooking. So now we've got 8 inches this way. Line that up at the 1.5 mark. Put our other ruler down. And now we've got our 8-inch block. So now we have our 8-inch muslin square and we have our 8-inch batting square. So we want to put one on top of the other like this, and we want to find the middle. So to do that, we fold it once, kind of finger press it a little bit, fold it over again, finger press it right here. Now you can faintly see where you finger pressed it right here. Take a pencil, and I like to make a little circle right here. That way I know that that is the very center. So since I have some solid strips, what I'm going to do is start with a solid. And I want it to be kind of square, more or less square. Not exactly, we're not measuring any of this. So we're going to put that right in the middle. Now you want to take one of your other strips and we're going to put it on top. We put right sides together and we're going to sew it right along this strip. So I'm going to cut this a little bit right here. And I'm going to take it over to the machine and sew it. You want your stitch length to be about 2.2, and don't worry about it being exactly 1/4 inch. You just want to cover up all the raw edges. So there's our first one. Take it over to our little iron and press it quickly. And that keeps everything taking shape. Now we're going to turn it to the right, clockwise. You just don't want to sew again on a fabric that is solid with no seam. You want to make sure that your next one has a seam in it when you put your next fabric down. So I'm going to trim this one just a little bit right here. And again, make sure that your edge gets caught in there, because if we were to match this top one, we might end up with a hole. And the only way really to fix that is to rip the stitches out and do it again. Okay, press it lightly. And then turn it to the right. So keep adding strips, making sure that you're covering the shortest piece, sewing them in place, and then pressing them in between, just to keep everything nice and flat. And just keep in mind that after every strip, you're going to turn it clockwise to your right and keep building from there. You don't have to sew them straight, you can sew them kind of crooked. Just make sure that you cover up every last piece of batting so that you don't have any empty spaces. Even if it's a little tiny one like this one, make sure you put one more strip in there and cover that up. So now all that's left is to trim off the excess, square up your blocks, and that's going to be it. Your block is all done. Now the back still has muslin on it, so we are going to do a backing on it. You're not going to see that, and we'll do that in the next video. But this is a really quick, easy way to make some really pretty blocks. I hope you found some inspiration today to use in your own projects. If you liked my video, please hit like and subscribe to see more. See you next time.